The HP Z27xs G3 is a 4K HDR 600 monitor with USB Type-C connectivity. In this review, you can see if it's actually worth its price tag, because in the UK it can be found for roughly £650 and in the US it can be found for roughly $680. So jumping straight in, let's talk about its image quality, and here the 27-inch IPS monitor has got a dedicated sRGB for the web and for the print that can be selected via the OSD. Now via the web sRGB mode, I had it tested at 83.8% sRGB gamma coverage and 96.2% gamma volume. You can see below how it compares to the sRGB standard. In terms of the average LTE, it is really low at 1.04 and a maximum of 3.05. As for its contrast ratio, it's pretty much on par with other IPS panels at 1090:1, and as for its measured white point, it is also pretty bang on at 6296 Kelvin at 100% in comparison to the 6504 Kelvin target. As for its gamma, it also sits pretty close to the 2.2 standard, which is further impressive. Now these numbers are certainly very good, and as a result means this is one of the most color accurate 4K USB Type-C monitors that I've tested to date, and as a result means that it can be used for professional video work or indeed image editing. Now aside from this, it is worth pointing out however that in terms of its max SDR brightness, it sits at a measly 212 nits. It is quite surprising because if you were to go in HDR, it goes up to a whopping 696 nits. So it's a shame here that the SDR brightness does not go as high. As for its minimum brightness, it does get all the way down as well, and therefore makes it pretty impressive. Now moving swiftly on, its brightness uniformity is pretty good as well across the board. Of course, this is somewhat panel lottery, and as for its backlight bleed on my tested panel, there was a little bit of bleed towards the bottom corners, but for an edge lit LED display, it's actually very impressive, and indeed being an IPS panel, it's no surprise that there's a little bit of backlight bleed. It's not noticeable, not in my opinion, but of course if you do want to eliminate all type of backlight bleed, then you'll want to go for a VA panel instead. Now while all of this is very impressive, I did notice some odd sort of behavior, and here it's to do with the backlight of the monitor. Specifically when I was in SDR, I did notice a little bit of fluctuations. I do find it quite hard to replicate via my camera and to show you the actual results, but in person it was certainly noticeable. There were like micro fluctuations that were occurring constantly, and yet sometimes when I was to enable or disable HDR or power on or off the monitor, the fluctuations would disappear. I'm not sure if this problem is isolated to my unit or indeed all units that are produced, but I've reached out to HP, and if I get any sort of information or update on said issue, I'll post it down in the description below or indeed in the pinned comments. Now I should also point out that this monitor has got a 10-bit panel, so therefore you might want to benefit from it if you're using certain applications, such as if you're doing image editing or video grading. Now it is a shame however that through the OSD you do not have an Adobe RGB or for example a DCI-P3 mode, which would have further enhanced the capabilities of this monitor if you're going to be editing in this color space. Now moving swiftly on, we get onto its HDR performance, and here I must say it was absolutely spectacular. When I was running 4K at 60Hz on this 27-inch IPS panel and playing Destiny 2, my eyes were left with a lot to enjoy. In other words, the overall color accuracy and the overall contrast ratio and indeed the dynamic range that the monitor was offering over SDR was certainly noticeable. As I did mention before, it hit almost near to 700 nits, and as a result means that the HDR experience will certainly be appreciated for those playing some casual games, or of course those people who are going to be editing in HDR, and as such over here you're going to get a very lifelike and color accurate reproduction. Now I appreciate this monitor is not a gaming centric panel, but nonetheless I thought to put it through its paces. Here in terms of its subjective input lag, it was actually really low, whereby my mouse clicks were responding very well on a game such as Counter-Strike Global Offensive, which is a Twitch based FPS game which does require a monitor to have very low input lag in order to get a great experience. Now the same couldn't be said however about its response time, so much so that HP have completely omitted an overdrive mode and therefore you only lock to one mode, and via the UFO blur buster test you can see over here there was a significant amount of blur, although there was very little or pretty much no overshoot to notice. Now elsewhere, it is worth pointing out that I did put it through its paces via the OSRTT tool, and I had a tested average D2G time of 10.45 milliseconds. Yet again, I'm just reiterating that this is not a gaming centric panel, but there are some sort of competencies that you might want to look out for if you're going to be casually gaming on the side, alongside, for example, doing some serious image or video editing work. Now moving on to the monitor's OSD, can be accessed through a physical joystick button found behind the monitor. Now through it you'll find a plethora of different options, such as in the color mode you've got different modes such as sRGB both for web and for print, photography, HD video, low blue light mode with the different modes within it, and then you've also got RGB gain adjust as well, which is really useful. For example, here you've also got a color preset information, which is quite handy to say the least. Now moving past this, you do also have the image section where you've got picture-in-picture mode, and then you've also got some test patterns which you can enable to check for, let's say, if you've got any pixel losses or, for example, any backlight bleed. That is quite a handy tool specifically on the longevity of the monitor. The input is pretty self-explanatory, and so is the power. You can also disable the power LED that's found towards the front side of the monitor. And then you've got the OSD controls, and you can adjust the joystick buttons as to what they quickly do. And then you've also got the ability to adjust the little plus and minus rocker, which is found towards the bottom side right next to the power button. Finally, you can also factory reset and also see some information about the display as to the current resolution and the refresh rate. Now moving past the monitor's OSD, I should comment about its overall design, and here it's absolutely spectacular. It's pretty much got a four-side borderless design. It also has a stand which provides height, tilt, pivot and rotation adjustment both clockwise and anti-clockwise, and of course if you don't want the stand you can replace it via VESA compatible stand. And as for the look of it, it's got this silver type of look towards the back and towards the stand, and towards the front it is pretty much minimalistic, so therefore it will fit on most desktop setups or indeed those who are running multi-monitor setups. Now as for connectivity, there's a plethora of different options because you've got DisplayPort 1.4 input and a DisplayPort 1.4 output, which makes it useful for daisy chaining. You also have an HDMI 2.0 input and also a USB Type-C input, which also delivers 100 watts of power, so therefore being quite useful for certain laptop configurations. Elsewhere, there is a USB Type-C output, which also does deliver 15 watts of power, so that can be useful for, let's say, charging a smartphone. And then you've also got 3 USB Type-A ports, which also have got a signaling rate of 5 gigabytes per second, which can be quite useful for transferring files to and from your PC. However, there are a few limitations that you should be aware of, and here the monitor does not have an Ethernet input, nor does it have any built-in speakers, and it also doesn't have a 3.5mm jack headphone output, and all of which can be a little bit cumbersome for those people using it in an office scenario. Elsewhere, you don't have a microphone, nor do you have a built-in webcam, which can be potentially a little bit cumbersome for those people using certain features such as Windows Hello. So with all of that in mind, it brings me on to my verdict, and frankly the HP Z27xs G3 is a seriously impressive monitor where it counts. In other words, when it comes to color accuracy and in terms of its lifelike HDR reproduction. However, at this price point I was expecting more features or indeed more customization from the manufacturer, and alas, over here some of its competitors offer a lot more bang for your buck. Ultimately, if you're going to be using this in a home environment and you're looking for a 4K USB Type-C color accurate monitor with HDR 600, then I can't think of a better alternative. Now, I'd be intrigued to hear your thoughts of the monitor down in the comment section below, and if you've liked this independent detailed review, definitely do drop a like, subscribe and hit that bell notification, all of which are greatly appreciated. And if you've done that already, I just want to thank you in advance. As such, I've been Totally Dubbed, and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Take care and goodbye.